We're back here in the tackle room, and today we're talking about how when the going gets tough and I just got to have a bite, what baits do I have tied on in the spring? Well, stick around, we're going to talk all about it. Oops, there we go again. That one's good. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and you can ask any angler. Springtime bass fishing can be a bit of a crapshoot. Some days are great. The bass fishing is awesome. They're biting everything, and you can catch tons of fish. You can catch your limit in just a little while. You catch nice sized fish, and you're having a blast. But on the other end of the spectrum, we know the very next day, there can be a cold front that comes through. It's rainy, it's windy, and you got a lot of chop on the water. The water's clear one day, and then it's cloudy the next. There's no stable temperature. Now, we know bass like consistency. It helps them establish a pattern. It helps them set up, and it helps them become more active. When we don't have that consistency, those bass can shut down and get a real bad case of lockjaw. Now, what do we do when we don't have a lot of time to fish? When we don't have where we can go out every single day? We've got work, we've got other obligations. So how do we cope with some of the harder days out there? Well, there's a couple of presentations I like to use that really work for me. If there's times when I just have to get a bite, when I'm working to get that skunk out of the boat and I need to do it as quickly as possible, well, there's two presentations I like to bring out. One is not so much a surprise. I talk about it quite often on this channel, and the other is something that I've only talked about a couple of times, but in the spring is a great time to bring it out because it's so effective and it can be very versatile, a lot more versatile than you might think. Now, first of all, obviously, I'm talking about a jerkbait. That's one of my confidence baits. It's one of the baits that I can use to get a bite as quickly as possible. I know that if I just need to get a bite, I can tie on a jerkbait. In this case, we've got the old H2O Express that is all beat up and chewed up by now and actually did a good bit of work for me today. Today, we went out to the little lake rather than the big lake because we wanted a little bit of a change of scenery. The wife and I, we hopped in the little boat and we kind of worked around the little lake for a while and had a good bit of success. Now, it was windy, it was cloudy, there was some rain, and those fish didn't want to cooperate. So this is what I tied on. And within the first couple of casts, well, I got a nice little bite. It wasn't a big fish. It was kind of a small fish, only about a half pound, 3/4 pounder, but it got the skunk out of the boat. And that set up the rest of the day. We knew the bass were there and we could actually see that they were active. They were chasing smaller fish. But how do you get those bass to bite? How do you get them to commit to your lures? It can be very frustrating indeed when you see those bass and they're being active, but you just can't get them to strike anything. Well, this little jerkbait did great. And I'm working it in several different ways just to find out what kind of mood those bass are in when it comes to my presentation. I actually worked this just a little bit slower today than I normally would this time of year. Usually, this time of year, you've seen me talk about it before. I'm doing that jerk, crank, jerk, crank, jerk, crank. I do a much faster cadence, almost like I'm using a spook or a walking bait under the water where it darts side to side very quickly with no pauses. But today, I fished it more like a traditional jerkbait. I actually gave it a couple of twitches and then let it pause. And then gave it a couple of twitches and then let it pause. And you know what? It actually worked out very well. In quick succession, I was able to get 4 or 5 really nice bass, especially for the little lake, which is not known for having very nice bass in it. They're usually on the smaller side. But I even caught some on back-to-back casts. So we went from struggling and having a hard time figuring out what those fish wanted to just tying this on and saying, you know what, I'm going to work the jerkbait because I know it's going to get me bites. And lo and behold, like I said, very, very quickly, I was on to some pretty nice fish, especially one that for the little lake was really on the big side.
No.
It's grass that's on the surface. There goes the hooks, man. Beep. There we go. Got another one. He's a baby. He's a little bitty guy. Oh, you're not breaking this rod. If you had a face full of hooks, you'd be flipping out too. And when they do that, they just make it worse to get themselves even hooked even more so. All right. Mm-hmm. All right, well, phooey. All right. Get my thing of the whatsits. There we go. Get the hooks out of your face. That's the third one I've caught that have landed. That I've actually landed. That's a little half-pound squeaker. That's the smallest one. I've gotten a lot of bites. All right, get another one. I think 3 is all I've brought to the boat, all on jerk baits. I don't think so. I think it's only been 3. But they're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
That's a good cast. Crank it down. You know. They're actually hitting it, working it a little bit slower, I think. Oops, there we go again. That one's good. Back-to-back cast. Yeah, this is a much better. Woo! For the little lake, this is a toad. This dude's over a pound. Back-to-back casts, honey, get in there. They're schooling up. They want the jerk bait. I will tie this jerk bait on yours. Look at that, he T-boned it too.
Just gotta learn how to do it. Oh, technique.
Mm-hmm. So a jerk bait can be a great presentation anywhere in the country during the spring. You can work them in that intermediate zone 2 area, even up to zone 3. You can kind of work them closer to the bank. If you know where the structure is, you don't want to work them through the structure in the cover, but working them around laydowns, working them around grass patches or around flooded brush can be very useful, especially if you know that the jerkbait has a good bit of calling power to it. With those pauses in there, you let it pause and you get bass that are not necessarily ready to commit. They'll strike it, and that's what worked for me today. I was able to get those bass that a little bit shy, a little bit, they weren't being so active. They were more finicky. They actually committed more whenever I would pause my bait, and that's when I was getting my strikes. Every single strike today, I got on the pause. So I knew that was going to work. Good old jerkbait, a boring old jerkbait. But I needed to get a bite. I needed to get the skunk out of the boat, and that's exactly how I did it. So what's my second presentation? What's another one that I'm using this time of year? Another one that's if I just have to get a bite. Any bite. Let's get the skunk out of the boat. Well, there is a presentation that I use, and it's one that my wife is rather fond of because she caught some really nice toads. As a matter of fact, she caught her PB on this presentation. And that is, well, this guy right here, the old tail spinner worm. And I just have it rigged up as a Texas rig. I've got a 3/0 EWG hook, and I've got a regular stick bait, and all I have is a hitchhiker with a small Colorado blade on the back of it. Just a regular bait cast setup. This has got 12-pound fluorocarbon, 7-foot medium heavy rod, 7 1-to-1 gear ratio. Just a standard setup. Now the thing you have to remember is that there are several ways you can fish this. You can fish it just like a regular old Texas rig. You can drag it along the bottom. You can bring it up and over the vegetation, or you can do what I like to do, which is pop it up a little bit, give it a couple of cranks, let it fall back down, and let it sit. Pop it up a little bit, give it a couple of cranks, let it swim, and you can even swim it slowly and steadily, almost like you're using a swim bait. But the thing to keep in mind is that little Colorado blade, that little tail spinner right there, is going to provide a good bit of drag. So on the fall, it's going to fall much slower. I've got a 1/8 ounce bullet weight on this, which is, pretty small, but even with a 1/4 ounce, it's going to impede the fall of this bait rather quickly. And this is a stick bait. These fall really fast, but whenever you can get them to slow down a little bit and give a little bit of thump, it adds quite a bit of drawing power. It adds quite a bit of attractiveness that those bass who are normally shy, whenever they don't have anything in their area that's stable, when they don't have the stability, those bass will get lockjaw, right? That's something that all anglers know. But something like this can help convince them. And during the spring, whenever the weather is all over the place, a tail spinner worm is great for getting those hard to get bites. And I've caught anything from little 1/2 ounce stinks all the way up to 4.5 pound bass using this technique. I've used it today on the Little Lake, and we caught a few nice bass. Actually, my wife caught her first bass of the year with this presentation. It was a really nice bite. So, she hasn't been able to go out as much as she used to go out with me, but that's going to change here in the next few weeks, and she's probably going to be with me pretty much every single time. So it was a great way to knock the rust off. It was a great way for her to catch her first fish. And she loves fishing these. It was what got her into bass fishing to begin with. When we started bass fishing together last year, this is what we tied on, and this is what became immediately a confidence bait. She liked a white trick worm with a tail spinner and a 1/8 ounce bullet weight on it, and that's all she needed. And I'm telling you what, she caught some really nice toads on some days where other guys around us were just flat out struggling, including myself. There are several days she outfished me with this simple setup. It's one of those things that we talk about whenever those bass don't have consistency, whenever they don't have anything that's stable. This little bit of flash, little bit of thump, it's nothing overpowering. And if you give it pauses and you dead stick it from time to time, like I said, you can fish this in several different ways. But a slack line, like with a Texas rig, give it a few little bit of drags across the bottom and it looks very, very lifelike. Or you can pop it up, give it a couple cranks, and then let it sit there. And maybe combine everything, give it a few drags, pop it up, wind it for just a couple of cranks, let it sit there. Drag it and combine everything. The trick always is, when it comes to bass fishing, is you want to be as random as you can with your presentation. You never want to have a pattern, because that's what looks most lifelike to those bass. When they see something that's got a regular pattern to it, a lot of times that can be off-putting, especially when they have lockjaw, especially when they're not really biting. Now, a reaction bite, it doesn't matter. Something goes zipping by them, they're going to reach out towards it, they're going to attack it. But whenever you're fishing more slowly, trying to get those bass to bite on a harder day, well, something like this. Fish slow, fished a little bit faster. You can actually use this to cover water, as I just talked about. You can crank it almost like a swim bait and then let it die. And I'm telling you what, you will get some monster strikes. So again, this is my little secret weapon for the spring. I've used this for a couple of years now, and it gets great, great strikes. So give it a try. I'm really sure if you try the tail spinner worm, you will be more than happy with the results. So there you have it. A couple of quick and easy presentations that anyone can do whenever those days are really tough. And you'd be surprised, just by varying how you retrieve your bait, how much you can attract that fish's attention and go from getting skunked all day and struggling all day to getting a few bites. You may have to wade through some dinks, but you will be getting bites, and eventually you will catch some nice sized bass. And in the end, that'll make that day really worth it. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.